Hugh Graham died suddenly on 9th of October, 44 years after he came to Selsey from Bishop Stortford. A former paratrooper, he worked in public relations, photography and journalism. A successful self-made man, he was gifted and knowledgeable about a wide range of topics, writing articles for a good number of leading papers and magazines. Husband, father, grandfather, colleague and friend, he contributed to significant organisations in Selsey like the Writers' Circle, Selsey Life, Snack Shack, East Beach Evangelical Church and Selsey Internet Radio. Regular reporter, innovator, website builder, encourager of young reporters, he was a leading figure in establishing the radio. He was engaging, popular, forthright and opinionated, and above all, he was fun and friendly. A good listener, he made lots of people feel better in life's difficulties and made a contribution whenever he entered the room. Fondly remembered as a neighbour, colleague, family man and Christian gentleman, Hugh made a great contribution to life in all its facets. We honour him and send loving thoughts to his wife Marjorie and his family. And now we go over to Hugh talking to David Bradley, Selsey's vet.
This is Hugh Graham for Selsey Internet Radio. I'm in the consulting rooms of pet doctors and I'm talking with David Bradley, who's Selsey's vet. David, you come from Australia, don't you?
Yes, 11 years ago.
Yeah, right. So have you been in Selsey literally for 11 years?
Yeah. Mm.
And you obviously quite like it then?
Oh, I love it, yeah. Well, it's a perfect location. I mean, it's 8 miles below a major city in Chichester with theatres and what have you. And here in Pet Doctors, you're only max 5 minutes walk from the sea if you go east, west or south.
Yeah.
Which just suits me.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So, you began as a vet in Australia?
Yes, yes.
So when did you qualify?
In 1968.
Really?
Yeah.
And what did you then do? So why did you want to become a vet anyway? Why not an ordinary doctor or a dentist?
Well, I did. I was enrolled to do medicine, and then I got a couple of scholarships and traineeships to do vet, so I switched. And then ever since, and then immediately after starting vet, and then I thought, no, what I'd like to do is do medicine when I finish. And so that the whole of my 5 years in vet, that was my plan, was to go and do medicine afterwards.
Yeah.
In fact, I started, but then there were numerous. At the same time, I was learning to fly, and then I started.
When you say you're learning to fly, what were you flying? Fixed wing?
Learned to fly in a fixed wing. Yeah.
Okay,
I didn't start flying a helicopter until I was 45 years of age.
Yeah.
But and then I did the first year. They wanted. I just got fed up and walked out of the exams for the first year. I said no, which was silly. I always regret it. But then again, I've had an amazing life as a vet.
Okay.
So I'm very happy.
So where did you start practicing veterinary?
Well, I set up my first practice was a flying veterinary practice in Australia. I started out.
So you've heard of the flying. We've all heard of the Australian flying doctors. So you were the flying vet. Were you the first flying vet?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it was the largest practice. It covered 350,000 square miles.
It's true.
In fact, they did a documentary, an hour-long documentary called The Flying Vet.
Yeah.
On me. And
really?
That was...
So you flew your own airplane?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So you didn't have a pilot?
No. I did. I had quite a lot of pilots. I used to get young guys up to give them hours up so they could get hours up. And then I had a bunch of vets working for me, most of whom flew, but every now and again I'd get vets that couldn't fly, and then I'd have these guys fly them around. I had 4 aeroplanes at the time.
Right.
So, and I've got about 10,000 hours in fixed wing.
Yeah.
And 4,000 hours in helicopter.
Okay.
But I used to do a lot of aerial mustering as well, which is...
What's aerial mustering?
That's when you fly around mustering the cattle, because all the work that I did was on the big cattle stations in Northern Australia, Queensland and Western Australia.
Right.
Which was sort of up around the 1, 2, 3 million acres, up to about 150,000 head.
Yeah.
and I'd go out in the aeroplane initially on the Barclay tablelands, which is right in the middle, and I'd muster the cattle in the aeroplane. So you'd spend, these would be 150 square mile paddocks, and maybe up to about 5,000-10,000 head of cattle in a paddock.
Right.
So I'd go around and put them together with the aeroplane.
So you herded them?
Yeah.
So you're using an aerial sheepdog?
Yeah, and then there'd be a stock camp would come in, they'd be out on horseback. You'd have 10 men, usually young men, like boys out of school, on horses, and I'd chase the cattle in, and then these guys would pick them up. And then they'd have armoured Toyotas, bull buggies, that would also be around there, and if a bull broke, they'd roll him and tie him up, and they'd pick him up in a truck. And then we'd get them into the yards, and then I'd test them.
So what were you testing them for?
Brucellosis and leptospirosis and tuberculosis.
So did you do just samples, or you weren't testing every beast?
Yeah, every beast.
Really?
And preg testing. So it was.
So you could be there for weeks, couldn't you?
No, you do. I could pregnancy test 1,500 head a day. And then TB test, you could test anything up to about 3,000 head a day.
When you say we could, how many people were doing this?
Well, in a stock camp there'd be about 10 or 12 men.
Yeah.
And then I'd be the vet, and there'd probably be a stock inspector.
So what did actually testing them for brucellosis involve? You took blood?
Yeah, blood sample from the tail vein.
Yeah.
So pick the tail up, stab it and collect the blood.
Yeah.
And then I'd fly the bloods. That was the peak of the...
So you obviously had to relate each sample of blood.
And number the beast.
To the beast, yeah. Okay, yeah. Right.
And then I'd fly them from Western Queensland down to Alice Springs at the end of the day. So that was a 3-hour flight across the desert, land, and somebody from the lab would meet me, pick up the bloods, and I'd sleep in the swag underneath the aeroplane and leave about 2 hours before daylight to get back to the place in Western Queensland, so I could test the next 1,000 head. That was the biggest one I did.
Yeah.
Amazing. It was so much fun.
So 10,000 beasts would take you 10 days?
Yeah, well, you wouldn't do it. Like that one was 3,000 head over 3 days.
Okay, yeah.
Bleeding and TB testing, 1,000 head a day.
And how often did you find anything wrong?
Oh, with the TB initially a lot. We'd take a whole race.
Yeah.
There'd be 10 head in a row.
Yeah.
And you'd have to blow them all out to post-mortem them to see if they had TB.
Okay. So then
once we got the blood results, when they came back in to be read, we'd take any doubtful titers out from their numbers on their hides, because you'd do a paint system.
Right.
So it was brilliant disease control, fantastic.
So no wonder Australian beef is so well sought after then.
Yeah. Oh no, it was.
So it's absolutely safe then.
Huge undertaking.
And are they just as careful now?
I think so. I haven't had anything to do with them for a long. Yeah, with the Australian cattle industry for a long time. But they're shipping live cattle all over the world.
Right.
Because I used to ship my cattle at the end of that period. I used to take my cattle into Indonesia.
Yeah.
Live.
Uh-huh.
And then grow them out. I set up a feedlot over there.
Yeah.
And then I set up an abattoir.
Yeah.
And we used to market Carlton quality beef.
Yeah.
That was right at the start of the live export business into Indonesia.
How exciting.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
So how long did you do this for?
We were exporting cattle for about 4 years.
Yeah.
Right at the end.
Uh-huh.
And then, by that stage, I owned a couple of cattle stations.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I sold them out to Kerry Packer.
Right.
And then I thought, and then I worked for Kerry for a couple of years. And then I said that I wasn't working out. So I said, look, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm leaving. So then I sailed around the world for 2 years.
What did you sail on?
A little harbour 62.
Yeah.
Yeah. I skipped it for an American. So that sort of broke the...
So at the time when you were herding cattle with an aeroplane, you obviously had already developed a love for sailing?
Yeah, I used to take the family sailing.
Yeah.
We'd fly from Western Australia across to Hamilton Island, which is right on the east coast.
Yeah.
And then you'd bareboat charter out of there.
All right. So where's your family now?
They're all split asunder. And Susan's back. She's still in Australia. We went our separate ways after we left Carlton. And Richard, who's my eldest son, he when we left Carlton, which was a major step for all of us, he came over here and went to the Royal Agricultural College in Cirencester.
Yeah.
And then fortunately, when he finished that, he said, "Do you mind if I go and do the deep sea diving course in Fort William in Scotland?" I said, "Absolutely not, off you go." So now he's a saturation diver.
Yeah.
And Nico, my younger one, he's still in Australia in Melbourne.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not sure what he's doing at the moment. But no, we're all over the globe.
So how often do you see him?
Very often at all, which is part of the sadness of the whole situation.
Really?
In fact, I had a long email from Nick today, and I spoke to Richard on Sunday, and I saw him a couple of weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
He comes by on the way over. He's moving over to Tarifa in Spain to live with his new wife and 2 young children. So I should see a bit more of them, one way or the other.
So, what brought you to Selsey then?
Well, that was all very serendipity, absolute serendipity. I did a locum for another practice down near here, and I came down here on a case one day, and this was 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Might have been 13 years ago. And when I came into Selsey, I thought, this is amazing. And that it was so beautifully located right on the Manhood Peninsula. And then I went and saw, because I was leaving that practice, and before I went and saw one of the directors of Pet Doctors, and to see if they had anything available. And I said I was particularly interested in Selsey because he lived above the practice, which I that stage preferred to do. And he said, "No, there's a woman there, and she's there for the long haul. But we would like you to go to Godalming or up that way." And I thought, oh, well, locum's a locum. And then I said, I've got to go back to Australia, because at the time I'd been diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And I went back to Australia, and I went back for Nico's wedding. And I was going to get over there, and I thought, well, no, I'll stay in Australia and deal with this prostate thing, because it's got quite a reputation for treating it. And then, anyway, the whole thing in Australia blew up because Susan had bought a house.
Susan's your wife?
It was, yeah. It isn't anymore, sadly. And she'd leased the house, bought it and said that people that owned it could have it during the wet season.
Yeah.
No, during the dry season over there. So after and then I sent an email to the director saying that I wouldn't be able to come back. And then he sent me an email saying, well, look, if you're interested, the Selsey practice is available. And then, because Susan had, unbeknownst to me, had leased the house, so I didn't have where to go. And Susan said, well, I thought you'd be going back to England. So I thought, well, all right, I'm going back, but I'm going to have to stay at least 2 years. And so I sent him an email saying, yeah, I would take it. So I came back. End of story. And then
you came back intending to stay for 2 years, and here you are 12 years later.
11 years later, yeah.
And with any intention of going back home?
No, not really. No. In fact, I'm due to. I've got British citizenship.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got that about 2 years ago.
Oh, right.
And I'm going for an interview tomorrow for a British passport. So, I don't know. I mean...
So now you're no longer Australian?
No,
well, you won't be Australian.
A bit disappointed in Australia in a way, and that's what because we had a lot to do with the Aborigines in Australia.
Sure.
And we were very close to them because the cattle stations that I owned, which was the top 2 million acres of Western Australia, was the traditional country of the Murruwung people,
Yes.
to whom we were very close.
Uh-huh.
In fact, Susan and I were godparents to two of the children. And I tried to... And Kerry Packer was very interested in it, but unfortunately Kerry's man wasn't.
Yeah.
And I tried to sort of come to a joint venture between the Murruwung people and the Indonesian cooperative that we were taking these cattle into. But it all fell apart. And then one of the politicians got involved, and I thought, that's when I decided, look, this is rubbish. You guys sort it out.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to leave.
Okay.
I did go back and try to do another deal, but there's so much politicising and I sometimes think, God, I should go back, but no. And that's what disappoints me about Australia. They're very bigoted, and that's about the only country in which the traditional people have no sort of...
No say.
No rights. Yeah.
It's strange because the indigenous people have a huge history, don't they?
Oh, that's what's so fantastic, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, there's the song lines.
Yeah. But there was a film recently, and I say recently, within the last 3 years, which showed that I don't know how long ago it was, but people were hunting the Aborigines for sport.
Oh, yeah. No, that's all part of the history.
That's horrendous.
And if you look at the history of the Maoris in New Zealand, same. All these places where the colonialists were in Africa, the whole bit. But it's. They were incidents of it, but the slaughter of them is just scurrilous, and then their history is just amazing. I've gone into it quite a bit with them.
Yeah.
And even because I knew the country very intimately because I'd flown over it. And of course they have the same sort of view because they used to walk over it.
Yeah.
And because I used to muster, well, especially when I got into helicopters, because you're down right, on the ground. I mean, you're under the trees and you know where all the water holes are and you know where the cattle are going to run and you know the country. And then these guys are saying, and then you come up through this crack in the ridge and then you follow that creek down there. And they all stay when you're talking to them. I had a big, about 20 men, the senior men of the various tribes, and I'd start quizzing them. And I had a laptop on my lap, and I'm trying to type this stuff up because you've got to type them phonetically. They say all this sort of, and then you say, "Look at me when you're talking," and it was, but just the most wonderful experience. But the trouble is now the bloody anthropologists have got it.
Yeah.
And it's all locked up in Canberra.
So if you're not careful, you're going to be lost, isn't it?
Oh, well, it's there. It's in the bloody, the safes in Canberra.
So what proportion of the Australian population is Aborigine now?
Oh, negligible. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but very small.
And are they shrinking?
No, they're probably getting more. But, there have been some gains made, but there's been some appalling, especially when they took the missionaries out of places like the Territory.
Yeah.
And the crime. They say that they've got to go through this phase of sort of assimilation, but that all gets too crowded to me.
And do the Aborigines now have the right to vote?
Oh yeah. No, that's a long part coming. But when I first went to the Territory, I was working for King Ranch, which was a big American company. That's where I first went into the Territory. And I was looking after their quarter horses in Santa Gertrudis at King Ranch in Bowral, south of Sydney.
Yeah.
And then they needed a vet for Brunette Downs, which was 4,700 square miles, a property right in the middle of where that Gulf is in Australia.
Yeah.
And 100,000 head of cattle, and they not a hill, just 4,700 square miles of grass, and they wanted a vet to test the whole herd, 100,000 head. Never had a vet up there before, apart from doing the odd mobs, and they had up to 20% TB.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, right, I'll go up. And I flew up from Sydney. I didn't fly myself. I flew up with the company Merlin, which is a turboprop that flew up to 30,000, then came down. And I'd never seen an Aborigine in my life up before that. And when we landed, this guy came up and he's looking very pucker. This is in the middle of the Northern Territory. He says, Mr. Green, like in the middle of the bloody territory, I'm going to call you Mr. Green. He said, we've had an emergency out at the Beef Road Yards, and I've got all the vet gear in the plane. I said, right, and then Toyota came in and got all this gear out of the plane, put it in the back of the Toyota, and unbeknownst to me, from the wilds of Sydney, the Beef Road Yards were 20 miles from the homestead. So we just headed on out to the Beef Road Yards, because it was the middle of the wet season, and there was a stock camp out with about 50 horses and about 15 men, all Aborigines, and this one little white guy with a big 10-gallon hat. And when we arrived out at the stock camp, which is just a camp with a caravan, and he's sitting in his wash tub, this little guy with his bloody 10-gallon having a soaping up. And there's a bunch of these full-blood Aboriginal guys around holding horses in various states of damage. He's tried to cross the whole plant of horses, to cross the creek at the Beef Road Bridge, and they've been washed, some of them were washed under and then lacerated. So I had to go around these horses and just stitch them up. No major cuts, but just sort of enough to require sutures. So that was my first contact with Aborigines, and then I worked with them all year in the stock camp. And they were amazing people, but at that stage, being young and from Sydney, I didn't tweak to working or associating with them. They used to live about 3 miles from the homestead area, and all the old people would work in the garden and hose. They'd stand there holding a hose. It was just fantastic. But then from that, when I went back and set up and practice in the Kimberley, which was about 5 hours flight time from Brunette west. But I used to work over into the territory and used to do a lot of work at Brunette. And of course, all these Aboriginal guys, every time you'd see them, and you don't recognise them, and they, "G'day Dave," or "G'day Doc," "G'day Doc," and I can't remember who it is. But it was just the most wonderful time. But you couldn't do what I did now because of all the regulation.
So when you came to England, to the English Veterinary Society, or whatever it's called, recognise Australian qualifications?
Oh yeah, very much. A lot of Australian vets come over to work, and they look for them because there's quite a shortage of. Because now there's a very high percentage of female vets, and they have a high percentage retire out of practice to get married and have babies, and the normal sort of problems associated with them. That's a very impolitic thing to say, but no, I mean, I'm 68, nearly 69, and I'm still doing a 5-day week. Well, a lot of vets don't do 5-day weeks. But I prefer to do a 5-day week.
So, what difficulties do you think lady vets experience which men don't? Is it just the size of the beast they're looking after?
Well, I had 2 young women working for me in the territory and that flew their own plane. And one of them, a very petite little thing, but I had one of the managers of the station call me up and say, "Listen, you can't send this girl out to do this work. She's going to get killed because you're working with wild cattle." But she wouldn't listen. She didn't. She was terrific, absolutely terrific. But no, in fact, I was talking to a guy on Alabaster up in Suffolk last weekend, and he had cattle, and he had, the 4 times I think he's had to call a vet out to his cat. It's been a very attractive young woman, and he said they're terrific, and they are. I mean, the girls that do vet are very, very highly motivated, and it's such a high requirement to get in now, whether you're male or female. And they're just so supremely intelligent, and they like doing with small animals, and so do I. But I've had my fill of dealing with cattle and horses, so I'm very happy to chuck the odd chihuahua under the chin. But I mean, I got bitten by a rabbit the other day, but such are the dangers of.
So is Selsey a small animal practice?
Oh yes, strictly nothing bigger than that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So how often do you get called out to look at a horse?
Never.
Really?
Yeah, they get a vet down from Arundel.
Strange.
Well, we don't do horses. We don't do any large animal work. It's a small animal practice. Nowadays, you have small animal practices and large animal practices.
So
the nearest large animal practice I think, is Arundel. None of the vet practices in the Chichester area do any large animal.
So by a large animal, wouldn't be a pony then?
Yeah, pony would be a large animal.
Okay.
Get a vet down from...
So then basically you're dealing with dogs and cats then?
Yeah, and hamsters,
Hamsters?
guinea pigs, anything that's smaller than that.
So, and you were...
So this is a fantastical existence. You know, especially when you've done what I've done. It's so lovely to be able to sit around in an air-conditioned room and see these animals and treat them. And I enjoy it, and I think I'm very good at it.
Well, judging by the reputation that you have in the village, yeah, you are very good at it.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't run them out or anything, you just do what's got to be done and keep it simple. And then, you know, if you've got, say, a cruciate ligament or a fracture, which used to be done here, but nowadays, if I were to do it, I'd be smacked around the ear by the Veterinary Association, because now it's become so sophisticated that you get people like the super vet on television. And I've sent a lot of people, a lot of dogs too, or other key practices where they do all the bone work and the ligament work. I mean, we had one of the giant breeds in on Monday who'd swallowed 3 needles. I had to go in and x-ray that, open him up, take the needles out, stitch him back up, and send them back.
So how did they get the needles?
I have no idea. But they were right down in the small intestine.
Really?
Yeah. But the thing we don't do is, because we've got 2 cats at the moment just this week that have got probable broken pelvises, but because they've only just been recently done, they're all sort of confined.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, those sort of injuries will heal without interference.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to interfere or send them for orthopaedic surgery, they're talking about probably £1,500, £2,000. So it's, you know when to fold.
So you're on the owner's side then?
Oh yeah, very much. Well, it's become so forbiddingly expensive to treat it, like to have an animal even. It worries me.
You wouldn't really want to own any form of dog or cat now unless you had animal health insurance, would you?
Pretty much, yeah.
But
unless you want to live dangerously.
I sometimes wonder whether the cost of insurance is governed by what the people supplying the services can get away with.
Yeah, that's sort of that's always out there floating around. But the whole insurance thing is the same the world over, whether it's for cars, aircraft, dogs, cats, humans.
Yeah,
it's an actuarial exercise. So it's but you get a dog that's broken a leg, you want to be insured. It's £2,000 later, and that's even with a cruciate, ruptured cruciate.
Really?
Oh yeah, that'd be $1,500 to $2,000 for a cruciate ligament rupture.
No.
But then you pay so much for the insurance. What do you want to do? If I put it in the bank, I'd spend it. But a lot of people do that. They put aside a little bit for the dog every week and have an account for them.
Okay. So what happens then if someone comes along to you with an animal that's maybe got a broken leg and they can't afford to have it fixed? What does a vet do then?
Well, we haven't. If they can't afford it, they can go to the PDSA.
Yeah.
If they're in receipt of benefits.
Yeah.
We haven't had one. They borrow money, or we haven't had anything. We haven't ever had that happen.
Right. Okay.
But they could elect to have it put down. So depending on how old it was, maybe it was 11 years old and broke a leg, we'd have to give serious thought to having it put down. It's a bit of a rough one.
You wouldn't want to have that on a 70-year-old vet, would you, that was still working?
Well, that provides...
So you certainly would want to do it on a 70-year-old reporter.
Yes.
I would like to think that the choice was pay up or be put down.
Well, usually it's not based on that. It's usually based on the fact that it's an 11-year-old dog and they don't want to go through...
Well, that's fair enough if you've had your 3 years and 10.
Well, that's right, yeah. Well, that's usually the owner elects to do that.
Yeah.
They don't want to spend that amount of money, given the fact that he's 11 years of age. But again, I've not had that case happen.
Okay.
In terms of a fracture or something like that.
All right. So, what's the strangest creature you've treated?
Well, over there, it's probably a crocodile. But yeah, no real weirdo ones.
The crocodile's pretty weird. What was the matter with it? Don't tell me
it had a no.
Do they?
No, no, it had a hook in its mouth.
What sort of a hook?
Fish hook.
Okay, yeah.
Because they're in all the rivers over there when you go fishing.
You into Selsey for the long haul, then you have no intention of retiring or going anywhere else?
Well, no, I'm being pressured to retire, but
by hopefully not pet doctors.
Well, no, I'm not. But I guess one has to think about retirement at 70 years of age. But then you're not called upon to do immense physical stuff. But
well, you love doing it, don't you?
Oh yeah. Mm.
So, is there any reason? Is there any compulsory retirement age?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I don't think.
Well, I don't think there is.
No.
Well, there certainly isn't for journalists.
No.
And I intend going on until I fall off my perch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, similar.
Because otherwise, you get interesting people to talk to like you. So, and you just go on doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I was reading about a journalist the other day. I can't remember who it was. But yeah. So. No, I'm not planning to retire, but as I say, people would like to see me retire.
Yeah. Why?
Because they'd like me to go out and join them in Suffolk.
Oh, okay. That's your son?
No, companion.
Okay.
Partner. No, anyway. She elected to go up there.
Well, Suffolk's lovely too.
Yeah.
Okay. But not as good as Selsey?
No, for goodness sake.
Well, can you not talk her into coming down to Selsey then?
No, she lived down here for 7 years, 8 years, yeah.
Yeah?
We had a fabulous life, but she wanted to be close to her family, so she's gone back and she's in the bosom of her family and very happy. So
you visit from time to time?
Yeah, commute.
David, I'd like to come back and talk to you again sometime.
All right, well, give us a yell, and yeah.
And thank you for this afternoon. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Next up, we have a feature that Hugh recorded at Summit Bikes.
Right, we've got Hugh Graham, and I'm in the offices of Summit Bikes, and I'm talking to Steve Mitchell. Steve, you've had some success recently, racing success.
Well, first point, just to clarify, it's not officially a race. It's a charity ride to cause awareness through community research.
But how many people were in this charity ride?
About 500.
And where did you come?
I come first.
So it wasn't a race?
Officially not a race.
Yes, okay. So, and how long did it take you? How many miles was it?
It was 100 miles.
Yeah.
It started at Richmond Park in London, scooped round to Midhurst and back up to London.
How long did it take?
5 hours, 35 minutes.
So that's an average speed of what?
18.6 miles per hour.
On a bike?
Yes.
Hour in and hour out. So no matter what it was, you were still doing nearly 19 miles an hour?
Yes.
Uphill and downhill?
Uphill and down dale, and that included stopping time as well.
Okay, and did you have much refreshment on the way?
I drank lots and lots of water and ate loads of bananas.
All right, so is this a regular occurrence for you, charity rides or non-races?
Yeah, well, I've started racing as well, but yeah, I like to try and help leukemia research.
Yeah. Well, you have an interest in that, don't you?
Yes, I do, yeah. Okay.
Now, what about Selsey cycling? How many people are regularly cycling in Selsey now?
I couldn't give you a number, but more and more. You know, we've got a group attached to the shop.
Yeah.
And Selsey, there's probably 30 involved.
Okay, and where do they go, or what do they do?
Sometimes we do rides from the shop, and that'll be on a road bike.
Yes.
Sometimes we do rides from the shop that are mountain bike.
Right.
Or, you know, we do organised trips. We do the whole of the South Downs Way. Every Tuesday night we've got the South Downs and have a play on the mountain bikes. So there's lots of different aspects of it. We also do family rides as well.
Okay. So the family rides, they involve mum and dad and the kids?
Mum, dad and the kids, yeah. Flat, generally about 10 miles. Most people can cope with 10 miles at a very sedate pace, even my 9-year-old daughter.
So how many bikes do you reckon you sell a year?
Without looking at the figures, I wouldn't like to guess.
Okay. But I've been in here this afternoon, and you sold too. So cycling is now becoming quite a sport in Selsey.
Not so much a sport for some people, but a means of travel for other people. It's just realising that it's a lot cheaper and there's no hills in Selsey, so anyone can do it.
Okay. What about the new cycle track from here to Chichester? When will that be open?
Well, I don't know when it's officially open, but it is currently being used by many people.
And so, tell me the route. So you come out of Selsey.
You can't yet access it via Bun Leisure, I believe.
Yeah.
So what I'm told is people are accessing it behind the touring park up School Lane and Warner Lane.
Right.
And then it's not very well signposted, but you can get all the way around to Bracklesham.
Can you?
Mm-hmm.
And then where do you go from Bracklesham Bay?
Wherever you like.
Okay.
You can continue over through the Witterings, then pick up another path called the Salterns Way, which is another family-friendly path which runs up to Chichester via the Chichester Marina.
Okay. Certain people who are friends of mine who are regularly riding their bikes into Chichester tell me that there's going to be eventually a commuter ride.
Remains to be seen. They've been talking about that for many years.
Okay. How long does it take you to ride from Selsey to Chichester?
Just under 20 minutes, about 16 minutes, something like that.
It's quicker than a bus, really, isn't it?
I guess it is, yeah.
Right. When are you competing next?
I've got another one, 19th of October.
Okay. Now, if somebody wants to join the group that you lead in, how do they actually get involved in it?
Send me an email or call me in the shop and I can sketch.
So your email address, Steve, is which one?
It's info@summitbikes.co.uk.
Okay. Oh, they can phone you at the shop?
Well, they can phone me in the shop. The phone number is 01243 697547.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Sue.
You're welcome.
Talk to you again.
Now we go over to Lynn and Hugh discussing one of Hugh's favourite puddings.
I think you're going to tell me how to make my favourite pudding. In fact, really, the only pudding... No, there's two puddings I like.
Okay.
I like lemon meringue pie, because that was fantastic last week.
Yeah.
And I also like apple charlotte.
Apple charlotte, yeah. It's an old favourite, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apple charlotte. You don't see it around too much today, actually. Yeah. Not many people do it. But here we go then for the apple charlotte. Just for Hugh, £6 of crisp eating or cooking apples. I prefer to use eating apples, than cooking apples. Cooking apples are easier to cook with. That's what they're for, but eating apples taste better in this recipe. Quarter them, core them, and chop them into 1/4-inch pieces, all right?
Yep.
Half a cup...
Do you peel them first?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I always peel apple first because, unless you're making a nice baked apple, there's another nice pudding, isn't it? Baked apple.
Yeah.
Yum, yum. Half a cup of apricot jam, strained. So you don't want any pips or anything in the apricot jam. 1 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoonfuls of vanilla extract or some vanilla paste, 1/4 cup of Calvados or rum.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
This sounds promising, then.
I know. That's what I thought. 1 pound of sandwich bread sliced and 1 cup of clarified butter. Anybody know what clarified butter is, Hugh?
No.
Well, it's kind of melted and separated.
Oh, okay.
It's called clarified. You separate the milk solids from the fat or something like that. Anyway, clarified butter. Sauce, cream anglaise or creme fraiche. All right?
All right.
Place the apple pieces in a heavy pot, cover and cook them until they're tender, stirring occasionally. Uncover and beat in the jam, the sugar, the vanilla and the flavouring. Continue cooking and stirring for 10 minutes or so until the apples are quite thick. Apples do thicken up with this in them. Preheat the oven to 425 degrees. Generously butter a 6-cup mould that is cylindrical and about 3 inches high.
Uh-huh.
Okay? I guess any kind of dish will do in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
Trim the crust from the bread. Select 1 whole slice and another cut into 4 half-moon pieces to cover the bottom of the mould.
Yeah.
Am I being too technical?
No.
Cut the bread up and line the mould with it so that it all fits round. Okay? Yeah. Saute these in 4 tablespoons of butter until golden brown. Lovely. Place in the bottom of the mould. So the ones in the bottom you're going to saute with a little bit of butter over the top and put them in the bottom. Cut the remaining slices into strips 2 inches wide. Dip them in butter and overlap them along the sides of the mould. So what you're really doing is creating a
pie case.
A pie case with bread, like we did with the summer pudding.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Cut off the ends that stick up above the edge. Fill the centre with the apple puree, mounding it in the centre, and dip 4 to 5 strips of bread in butter and cover the top. And drizzle the remaining butter around the edges. Place mould in a pan to catch any bubbling butter and bake for 30 minutes until the bread is toasty brown. Cool for 15 minutes before gently unmoulding. So cool it down before you gently unmould it. And if the charlotte threatens to collapse, return it to the mould to cool completely first, because some people get impatient and try and turn it out quickly. Yeah. But no, you've just got to let it cool right down on its own, not in the fridge straight away.
Now this sounds very like something that my granny used to make.
Okay.
I can't remember what she called, but it was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Apple charlotte, you can serve it hot, warm, or at room temperature. Doesn't matter.
Well, we used to have it cold as well.
You can eat it cold. Doesn't matter, does it? You can eat cold curry if you want to.
With lots of thick cream or ice cream.
Lots of ice cream.
It's cholesterol nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, I should think it was really, with all that bread and butter. Heavens, yes. But
delicious.
But delicious.
Yeah.
Lovely dessert.
Okay, thanks a lot, Lynn.
And now we go over to Hugh and Mike from East Beach Evangelical Church.
We're in East Beach Evangelical Church in Selsey, Mansfield Place, near the East Beach shops. And I'm Hugh Graham, and I'm talking with Mike Nicholls. And Mike, I know that East Beach Church, my own church, has joined with you in an initiative to help young people in our town and those people in need. You were talking about all sorts of things the other day. Are you working with other churches?
Yes, Hugh. I think just to give people a little bit of context, clearly all four of our churches in Selsey, as well as the shop, the coffee shop in the town, offer a range of things to the whole of our community. A lot of the churches let out their halls to a variety of organisations that take place there. Friends at our Methodist Church run the local food bank, for which all the churches and others collect food to be given out on a Friday between 4 and 6 o'clock. And there is, in that sense, an awful lot that goes on. Your own church at East Beach, I know, run things for called Tea and Chat for people, and a lunch club on a monthly basis, and provide a forum for young children and their carers.
Yeah, every Friday morning
to come together. So there's an awful lot that is being done already, and for which we are very grateful. I think the particular initiatives that we've talked about are twofold, really. One is that we've discovered, as we've taken a number of initiatives to address the issue of loneliness in our community, we've found that for quite a lot of people, the weekends are the most difficult period of the week.
Yes.
And so we're just looking at the prospect of putting on a monthly tea on a Sunday afternoon for people who might like to come together, maybe for a cup of tea, maybe for a board game, something like that, for a couple of hours. And as you indicate, that the Friends at East Beach have indicated a willingness to be part of that initiative. And I'm talking to our sister churches about that same sort of initiative at the moment.
Well, I suppose they might actually rotate it once.
I think there's a lovely opportunity, obviously, with four churches to kind of do that kind of rotation, one a month in that sort of way. Clearly, our churches are made up of volunteers, and we have to, bear that in mind all the time. But I think clearly there is a need, and if we can meet that sort of need in some way, then I think that would be, really helpful. And the other thing that we're looking at the moment is that occasionally there are needs in Selsey for an emergency homeless provision, and we've called that Refuge, and we're just hoping that among the churches, and also with one or two willing individuals, we might be able to provide, when it's needed in an emergency, a bit of short-term shelter for folk when that need occurs.
That sounds wonderful. But the churches in Selsey cooperate anyway, don't they? Because I can think that all four churches got involved with the Passion Play, didn't they?
Yep, they did.
And also, I think that something started by James Wesson with the carols at the Seal Hotel the Saturday before Christmas. I think that's continuing this year, isn't it?
Yes, and indeed, even events like when the chairman of the council, Mike Beale, put on A Dark Day Dawned as part of the commemorative events to do with the 100th anniversary of the First World War. Quite a lot of people taking part. had previously taken part together in the Passion Play.
Yeah.
And these links do form good friendships, which mean that you come together and do things together.
Which reduces loneliness, doesn't it?
It reduces loneliness, and it gives a sense that the churches are not just there for their members, but they are extending out to serve the community in various forms of social action, which is immensely beneficial.
Now, I seem to have heard a murmur, I don't know whether it's become a concrete proposal yet, but aren't you hoping to organise a Christmas lunch this year?
We are, Hugh, and it has become a concrete reality now. We've had a meeting which a number of volunteers came to and have taken on different roles. We've got someone who's going to project manage the venture, and it's definitely going to happen in the town hall on Christmas Day for up to 50 people who might otherwise be on their own. We've already had some offers to help with transport from the Venture Club, the community bus and one of the local taxi firms. We've had people like the Selsey carers, the Selsey Lions, who've indicated they want to come on board to help in different ways. We had a lovely offer from the town hall willing to put up what they call a sort of gift or a pledge tree where people might come and pin an envelope with a tenner in to go towards the costs of providing this meal. We've got Danny and Julie who run Julie's Kitchen dinner, providing Meals on Wheels each day, who are going to do the cooking on Christmas Day. Steve Saunders from Selsey Life is doing all kinds of things in terms of publicity and so on. So it's a lovely coalition of people. Peter Gibbs, one of the town councillors, is on board helping in different ways. Right,
now, big and really important question. If you think you're going to be alone this Christmas, how do you make sure you get a place at that table for lunch?
Well,
who do you contact?
The simple answer I would give you just at this moment is you can always ring the Selsey Information Exchange on 01243 201 616, and you can either speak to someone or leave a message. You can book a place that way. But after our meeting in early October, there will be a range of publicity initiatives to make sure that people know about it and know they can come, and they'll have a number of vehicles by which they can make that sort of booking. We also want to make sure that people who would otherwise be on their own are invited to come.
Yeah.
Because there are some people who would never put their hand up and say, please may I come?
Yeah.
But if you said to them, would you like to come? They will say yes, and we want to try and meet both those needs.
Okay. Well, it sounds to me, though, as though Selsey really is a caring community.
There's an awful lot of good work that goes on in a whole range of organisations and activities, yes.
And a lot of goodwill.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Okay.
Some fine examples of Hugh's work there. Thank you for listening to Selsey Internet Radio.